All right, we're going to quickly look at our three Persian empires, and I'm going to give you some quick vocab on them. Some of it is going to come directly from your reading. So first, the Achaemenid Empire. The Achaemenid Empire is the most important one for you to know. What you need to know about that one is this is the big, huge empire that takes a whole lot of power in the classical era. This is the one that we have Cyrus, Darius in. Also, this is the empire that gets conquered by Alexander the Great at the end. At the time, the Achaemenid Empire is the empire in the world. It is the most powerful empire the world had ever seen at that point. Now, this empire is very significant, not just because it was a huge, big empire, but also because religious tolerance was well known. And here we had the Edict of Toleration, where King Darius allowed the Jewish people to return to their homeland. And basically, religious tolerance was accepted in the Persian Empire, which wasn't in many other places. So remember that this was a huge empire, was pretty religiously tolerant, and it was defeated by Alexander the Great. Our next Persian Empire would be the Parthian Empire, and it's down there. See it down there? All right, so the Parthian Empire was smaller, and it was a rival of the Roman Empire for a long time. The Parthians were, they had battles against Julius Caesar. Eventually, the Romans are able to defeat them and basically make them not as much of a big deal. The Parthians are also known as being very good traders on the Silk Road. They have a great location for trading goods in the early Silk Road, which we'll talk about soon. This is the first time I'm bringing it up, but I'm going to say Silk Road about 10,000 more times before we're done. So the Parthians are also known as being very good traders. And this trade will cause other civilizations to expand, and trade is going to be a big deal when we get into classical era. When we're into classical era at the end of it, we're going to spend a whole chapter on that. Go back to the Achaemenid Empire real quick here. I just wanted to add one thing. They were also known for their technology. Qanats, which are basically like irrigation. We'll talk about that later on. There's how you spell it down there, Q-A-N-A-T. Qanats were an irrigation system that was used in the Achaemenid Empire to get water to the people. And we'll talk more about that in our upcoming chapters. The Sassanid Empire is the last of the empires we'll talk about, and probably the least important. The Sassanid Empire, it says there in the reading, is a Neo-Persian Empire, which means it was a new Persian Empire. It is known for the spread of Zoroastrianism, which is an early monotheistic faith, which eventually kind of dies out. There aren't many Zoroastrianist people around anymore. However, Zoroastrianism does have a huge influence on what many people believe, and that's actually our next vocab word. So the Sassanid Empire, it does eventually fall, especially as Islam, or Muslim people, the religion is called Islam, as they spread throughout the Middle East and other parts of the world. So Sassanid Empire was the last Persian empire, spread Zoroastrianism, and eventually gets taken over by Islamic empires, which will be a really big deal in our next era, which is our next era. Let's just get right to the next word, which is Zoroastrianism. I kind of started that one for you already. Zoroastrianism is an ancient monotheistic religion, meaning they believed in one God. Many historians say that Zoroastrianism had a huge influence even on Judaism, and therefore pretty much all our modern monotheistic faiths. There's not much left of Zoroastrianism from their original book that they have. They have their original book. The book is called the Avesta. I actually forgot the name of it right now and had to Google it. But the Avesta is the name of the book of Zoroastrianism. And the amazing thing is there's only 1/4 of the original book left. So there still are thousands, literally thousands of Zoroastrianers, whatever people be called who believe in Zoroastrianism. There's thousands of them who are left in the world. Not millions. There's not that many of them. And they only have 1/4 of their original book to believe in anymore. This is very associated with Persia, which is modern-day Iran, but this was the religious belief that spread in the Persian empires. Zoroastrianism spread in all three Persian empires. And it eventually kind of dies out, especially with the spread of Christianity, Islam, and other religions. They kind of lose when the diffusion of other religions happen. One reason why Zoroastrianism goes away, many historians say, as Alexander the Great came and took over Persepolis, that he destroyed the city of Persepolis. It was pretty much a drunken rage. Alexander the Great had won a huge victory, as the Macedonians often did, had quite a few drinks, and then literally destroyed the city of Persepolis, and much of the ancient writings of Zoroastrianism were destroyed with it. And this is one reason why Hellenism, or Greek culture, spreads, and Persian culture kind of goes down after Alexander the Great, for, as we talked about in class, for better or for worse. All right, for this next one, I have to apologize. Change this vocabulary word a little bit. So do what I did here. I put Edict of Toleration. That's a mistake. It's supposed to be Edict of Restoration. We'll change that, okay? So change that right now. Put Edict of Restoration. The Edict of Restoration is what Cyrus did on the Persian Empire. In the Achaemenid Empire, Cyrus made an Edict of Restoration, which allowed the Jewish people who were kicked out of their homeland by the Babylonians, he allowed them to return. So Cyrus allows the Jewish people to return. He is glorified in the Torah for this. And his name comes up many times, and he's very well praised because he allows the Jewish people to return to their homeland. This pretty much ends the first Jewish diaspora, where the Jewish people are kicked out and they're allowed to come back. And it's also a big signal, and it's significant because it shows the the religious tolerance that the Persians had for other people. So let's look at Cyrus there. Cyrus was a Persian empire, the Achaemenid Empire. Again, Cyrus was very well known for one thing, for the Edict of Restoration, allowing Jewish people to come back to their homeland. He is also known for building and really making the Achaemenid Empire a strong empire for them to pass on to his son Darius and other emperors after that. So he's kind of like the guy who really builds the Achaemenid Empire of Persia into a strong empire and sets up Zoroastrianism as the religion, but also allows a lot of religious tolerance of other religions. And this will be significant because, religious tolerance is still a pretty big deal to this day that we struggle with. Darius is an emperor who follows after Cyrus in the Achaemenid Empire. Darius continues to build the Persian Empire, pretty much is kind of like seen as the guy who makes it pretty much to its peak. And also builds the city of Persepolis, which becomes this huge classical era city. Unfortunately, it's later burned down, but Persepolis becomes kind of like the jewel of the Achaemenid Empire in Persia, which is then pretty much seen as the strongest city and the strongest empire at that time in the classical era. Remember, this is before the Romans happened later on and before China really builds their strong empire. The Royal Road. The Royal Road is a road that was built by the Persians to increase trade throughout their large and growing empire. So the Royal Road, again, gets started there in the Achaemenid Empire. Most of the big things we talk about are in the Achaemenid Empire for Persia. And it establishes trade of goods going back and forth through the variety of lands that exist in the Persian Empire. Many scholars say that this road is kind of like a beginning in what we'll see an expansion, which will become the Silk Road, which becomes freaking huge, and we'll talk about that quite a bit, as that is a huge inspiration for trade that goes on throughout Europe all the way to Asia, like East Asia, and like a lot of cultural diffusion and goods going back and forth, and it'll change the world. So the Royal Road is significant because it's an early trade route, one of the early trade routes that will lead to the development of the Silk Road. All right, the Battle of Marathon was a battle in the Persian War where the Greeks were able to defeat the Persians, which was really significant because the Persians were definitely the favorite. And if the Persians had defeated Greece, so many things in Greek culture wouldn't be known or as well known today. The ideas of democracy, the philosophy that we talked about that came from Greece, Socrates, Aristotle. So Greece is able to defeat them. And one little significant thing about this battle that's a minor detail actually is at the end of the battle, there's a Greek runner who runs 26.2 miles to the city of Marathon when it's done and says victory and victory and then falls and dies. And because of that, we have people who, like many of your teachers in the school, who run marathons till this day. And hopefully none of them will die. So Mr. Smith and Mr. Myers, they've done this and they've survived. So you can run a marathon and be okay. It's actually pretty healthy. But anyway, the significance is that Greek culture spreads because they're able to hold off the Persians, especially when Alexander the Great comes in and kicks the Persians' ass later, burns down Persepolis, and spreads Greek culture even more. Our next word is Alexander the Great, but that was on the last list, so you don't need to write that down again. So those are our vocab words.